Good evening. On behalf of the World Jewish Congress and our co-chairs, David de Rothschild and Chela Safra, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this very special evening. Special because of our guest of honor and Theodor Herzl Award winner, Dr. Henry Kissinger. A man who I've always looked up to, a role model for me, I'm sure for many other people. If you look at your dinner journals on your seats, you will see letters of tribute from every living Secretary of State. Henry Kissinger commands respect. That's because Henry Kissinger brought us an unusual combination of knowledge, brilliance, and skill to the office of Secretary of State. 40 years ago, Americans got used to his amazing diplomatic achievements on a regular basis. They were the big ones: ending of the Vietnam War, opening China, détente with the Soviet Union, and the shuttle diplomacy that ended the devastating Yom Kippur War. That last agreement led to Anwar Sadat's visit to Jerusalem and the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. Henry, I know you are a busy man, but we really could use you back in Washington today. There is one more footnote that has special significance tonight. Henry Kissinger was the first Jewish Secretary of State, a fact that did not go unnoticed by certain world leaders. During the shuttle diplomacy, Secretary of State Kissinger made it quite clear to Golda Meir, just so that there was no confusion. He said that he was an American first, Secretary of State second, and a Jew third. That was fine, Golda Meir told him, since Israelis read from right to left. And when Richard Nixon casually mentioned to Golda Meir that the US and Israel both had Jewish foreign ministers, Henry Kissinger and Abi Eden, Golda Meir answered, "Yes, that's true, but ours speaks English." That famous accent is part of the whole remarkable package. It comes from his boyhood in Germany, and through this one man's life, we see the entire Jewish story of the 20th century. It is his story that actually explains why we need a World Jewish Congress to fight for Jews everywhere. About 3 weeks ago, I was having lunch with a friend, and he asked me what sounded like an odd question. He said he certainly knows the name World Jewish Congress and what it did in the past, but what exactly does it do now? I'm guessing some of you here tonight might be wondering the same thing. So here's the answer. You know that every country in the world has a foreign ministry, and foreign ministers represent their countries around the world. That is essentially what the World Jewish Congress does. It is, in effect, the foreign ministry, the diplomatic arm of the Jewish people throughout the diaspora. It wasn't always there. It was born out of necessity. In the summer of 1936, a group of concerned citizens from around the world, from 32 countries, gathered in Geneva. They had one goal: to draw global attention to the growing threat coming out of Nazi Germany. Sadly, nobody listened. Up until that moment, there was no mechanism in place for all the Jewish communities around the world to speak as one people. There was no organization that could stand up for Jews when they were in trouble. and they certainly were in trouble in 1936. That was when the World Jewish Congress was founded. Unfortunately, those delegates could not stop the coming disaster, but we learned our lesson, and we learned it the hard way. Over the past 78 years, the World Jewish Congress has worked with governments across the globe when Jewish issues have come up. Since 1948, the State of Israel has physically protected Jews, and thank God for that. But when Jews need political protection, and when Israel needs political help, there is a number they can call, and we will answer it. It doesn't matter if there are 70 Jews in the country or 700,000. I was in Tirana, Albania, 2 months ago, a place that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. I was there to meet the Jewish community leaders. When I asked them how many Jews actually lived in Albania, I noticed they started counting the number of Jews in the room. That was it. I had met the entire Albanian Jewish community. But there was an important part of the story. We were there, and we showed them that somebody cared. We traveled the world to meet with presidents, prime ministers, and kings on behalf of the Jewish people. And we make it very clear that any anti-Semitic behavior within their borders is unacceptable. It is intolerable and will not go unchallenged. If you think 1936 was a long time ago, think again. This past summer looked more like 1936 than 2014. You all saw the pictures, the huge anti-Israel demonstrations throughout the Middle East and Europe that quickly turned into the lowest form of anti-Jewish riots. If you want to know why we need a World Jewish Congress today, just read the headlines. The irrational hatred of Jews has returned along with the growing ignorance and intolerance that fuels it. I have a second question to my friend's question. What exactly does the World Jewish Congress do? Since 1945, it wasn't hard to be Jewish, especially here in America and throughout Europe. Some of us thought it would last forever, but 70 years and 3 generations later, the horror of World War II is forgotten. Anti-Semitism has resurfaced on the far right, and an insane hatred of Israel has taken over throughout Europe on the left, and even here in America. And if you think this is only a Jewish problem, you are wrong. What the World Jewish Congress does impacts every single person, no matter what your religion is. This summer, I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times titled, "Who Will Stand Up for the Christians?" I did this not as Ronald Lauder, but as president of the World Jewish Congress. And I received thousands of letters of thank you. And many noted the irony that it took a Jewish leader to finally acknowledge the slaughter of thousands of Christians throughout the Middle East and Africa. That's because Jews understand what can happen when the world is silent. We learned the hard way. We must all stand together to stop injustice and bigotry. None of us can be silent anymore. Yes, dictators and thugs often go after the Jews first, but the Jews are never the last victims. And if you think the World Jewish Congress is only about some forgotten Jew in a faraway place, think again. When that Jew is threatened, we're all threatened, just as when Christians and those of other faiths are threatened because of their beliefs, our freedoms, our lives are in danger as well. As this may sound misplaced here in the Waldorf Astoria, but ask Henry Kissinger, who had to leave his very secure home at the age of 15. When things turn ugly, they can turn very quickly. I saw this in Europe over the summer. That is why I'm devoting all my attention to this one cause. That is why I've asked you to help me. If you take anything home tonight, I want you to remember, this isn't about someone you don't know. and will never meet. And this isn't even about you. It's about your children and your children's children. It's about their future as a free people. It's about our entire way of life and whether they will enjoy it as well. Before I turn over the podium to Rabbi Arthur Schneider for the Hamotzi, and later to Barbara Walters and Henry Kissinger, I want you to know how proud I am to be president of the World Jewish Congress, and how proud I am of all of you for being here tonight and supporting us. This is my prayer tonight. May our children live through the same golden period that we were fortunate enough to have lived through in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Thank you, and God bless you all.